This week's story is called Whistle for Willie. We have on page 80, we are going to look at our target skill, target strategy, and do some previewing of the topic. So if you could turn in your book to page 80 and read it together with me or follow along. Our target skill is cause and effect. It says sometimes one story event causes another event to happen. The cause happens first. The effect is what happens next. As you read, ask yourself what happens and why. You can use a chart to help you understand events. A graphic organizer like this one can help show how one event leads to another. And by listing causes and effects, it will help you to understand what's happening in the story and why. Our target strategy is to monitor and clarify. If a part of the story doesn't make sense while you're reading it, you can ask questions, you can reread, or you could use the pictures for help. Hopefully you are using the monitor and clarify strategy when you read, and not just our anchor text, but every time you read. If it doesn't make sense, do those things. Ask questions, look at the pictures for help, or try rereading it. Maybe you got a word wrong, and if you reread it, you'll see that, and then it will make more sense. Let's preview the topic. It's pets. A pet can be a good friend. A cat can cuddle. A dog can play with a ball. What kinds of pets do you know about? Have you ever had a pet? Pets need care. They need to be fed, and some need to be walked. What pet would you like best? You will read about a boy and his pet dog in Whistle for Willie. Turn the page. Here we see the cover, Whistle for Willie. It's by a man named Ezra Jack Keats. He wrote and illustrated books for children. When Mr. Keats was a boy, he drew pictures on the kitchen table. His mother was so proud, she kept the art rather than wash the table. That's kind of silly. All right, so we have this graphic organizer, the cause and effect, what happens, and why it happens. And we have the genre is realistic fiction. A realistic fiction story is a story that could happen in real life. The boy in Whistle for Willie is playing in his neighborhood and at home in different parts of the story. He seems like a real boy who was in real places, so I think this selection is realistic fiction. Let's look at our essential question before we preview the story. The essential question is, how can you take good care of a pet? That's a very important question, and as we read, we're going to think about that and answer that question. So right now, I would like you to do a couple of things. All right, listen carefully. I would like you to preview the story. It starts on page 83 and ends on page 103. So preview the story. Look at the pictures. What are the characters doing? Where are they? All right, look at those things. After you preview the story, I'd like you to predict what you think the story is going to be about based on your preview. And then set a purpose for reading. Why are you going to read this story? What do you think will be your purpose for reading? So pause the video now and do those three things: preview, predict, and set your purpose, and then come back to the video. Alright, now that you've previewed, predicted, and set your purpose, if I were going to set this purpose, my purpose for reading this story, I see a boy, and he looks like he's whistling. And I wonder why in the world he's whistling. I also wonder who is Willie. It might be the dog, or it could be someone else. I'm going to read to find out why the boy is whistling, and who Willie is. Tell your learning adult at home your purpose for reading this story. And then you're going to pause the video and you're going to read the anchor text and then return to the video once you've read pages 84 through 103. Now that you've read the story about Whistle for Willie, let's think through the text. I am going to ask you several questions, and I want you to pause the video and answer them with your learning adult at home. All right, it's very important that you share your ideas after reading a story and that you think about what you read. So, the title of this story is Whistle for Willie, and on the first page, I see a boy named Peter leaning against a traffic light. So then who is Willie? If I look back at the title page, I think that the dog on the title page must be who Willie is. But to be sure, you need to read on. Here we have and analyze the text. Cause and effect. What happens when the boy whistles? Describe what Peter sees the other dog doing. Who is the main character of this story? In many stories, the main character has a problem. What is Peter's problem? Which words in the sentence help you know what world means? Why did everything seem to turn up and down after Peter stopped whirling around? The author, Ezra Jack Keats, is also the illustrator. Why do you think he drew pictures that look tilted for pages 86 and 87? Describe the new character that we learn about. How does Peter act when he sees Willie coming? Why does Peter do this? Does Peter whistle? Analyze the text. Figurative language. What does quick as a wink mean? And why do you think so? What does Peter do after he gets out of the carton? How do the illustrations show you that Peter lives in a town or city? Why does Peter put on his father's hat? Why can't Peter run away from his shadow? How could he get away from his shadow? Reread page 95 and look at the picture. What do you think Peter will do next? What clue helps you to know? How is Peter's problem solved? Why does Willie stop and look around? Describe what happens when Peter comes out of the box. How do you think Peter feels during this part of the story, and why? What message or lesson do you think the author wants to tell readers with his story? Why do you think that Peter whistles all the way to the store and back? Turn to page 104. In Whistle for Willie, story events cause other events to happen. The cause is the reason why something else happens, and the effect is what happens next. In the story, Peter keeps trying to whistle. This is the cause. What happens when he tries to whistle? Use a chart like this one to show why important events happen. So what happens because he tries to whistle? What's the effect? What does his whistle do? Authors often use words in interesting ways to help you picture what is happening. The story says that Peter scrambled under the carton when he sees Willie. These words help you to know how Peter moves. He does not just go under the carton slowly, he goes under very quickly. What other words does the author use in interesting ways? See if you can think of other figurative language that the author used in the story. Now it's your turn. Page 106. We're going to return to the essential question, how can you take good care of a pet? Well, you can look at how Peter takes care of Willie and answer that question. How does Peter take care of Willie? Use text evidence to help you explain and tell your learning adult. And talk about what you know about taking care of a pet. Then have the conversation and answer those questions in the blue box. What lesson can you learn from Peter? Why does Peter want to learn to whistle? And Peter learns how to whistle. What have you learned how to do because you kept trying? You're right about reading is what would Willie say if he could talk? What would he say happened? Write a few sentences that tell the story the way Willie would tell it. Your writing tip is to use words like first, next, then, and finally to tell when things happen. You can write about this on a sheet of lined paper or in your composition notebook.